Before the war, he was a national hero, a pioneer of aviation, a symbol of modern Latvia. He built aircraft with his own hands. He flew daring routes across continents. School children knew his name. But in 1941, in the forest outside Riga, the same man would help oversee the murder of thousands. His name was Herberts Cukurs. History would remember him by another title, the Butcher of Riga. Welcome to History Unpacked. If you enjoy the content, consider subscribing. We post every week and we welcome any feedback. To understand the depth of the betrayal, we must return to the Latvia of the 1930s. Independent since 1918, proud and precarious, Latvia was a small nation seeking its place in Europe. Aviation symbolized modernity, ambition and national confidence, and no name embodied the promise more than Herberts Cukurs. He was not merely a pilot, he was a self-taught engineer. He designed and built aircraft. In 1933, he flew from Riga to West Africa, a remarkable feat for the time. Newspapers celebrated him, politicians embraced him. He became a symbol of Latvian ingenuity. He was charismatic, public, admired. He also harbored nationalist convictions, strong ones. In the increasingly tense political atmosphere of the late 1930s, Europe, these convictions would find darker expression. In 1940, Latvia was absorbed into the Soviet Union under the shadow of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Arrests followed, deportations followed, fear settled in. Then, in June 1941, the Germans invaded the Soviet Union. When Wehrmacht units entered Latvia, many Latvians greeted them not as conquerors but as liberators from Soviet rule. It was unfortunately a tragic illusion. Within days, violence began. Local collaborators formed militias. Amongst the most notorious was the Arajs Kommando, led by Viktor Arajs. It operated under German supervision, but its membership was largely Latvian. Herberts Cukurs joined them. The Arajs Kommando became one of the most lethal killing units in occupied Latvia. Its primary task was simple: eliminate all Jews. Riga, before the war, had a vibrant Jewish community, over 40,000 people. Merchants, teachers, doctors, children, synagogues, schools, shops, a community century old. Within months, most of them would be dead. Eyewitness testimonies, post-war investigations, and survivor accounts consistently placed Cukurs amongst the leading figures of brutality. He was not a peripheral participant. He was present at arrests, present at beatings, and present at executions. Survivors described him as enthusiastic, volatile, and sadistic. Accounts speak of him personally shooting prisoners, of him striking detainees with pistol butts, of humiliations carried out in public, of violence inflicted not merely to kill, but to terrorize. One particularly chilling description recounts him dragging Jews from hiding, laughing as they were forced into trucks bound for execution sites. These were not anonymous acts in distant fields. These were acts inside of Riga. In early July 1941, Riga's synagogues were set ablaze. Jews were locked inside. Witnesses later testified that members of the commando stood guard as the buildings burned. Those who attempted escape were shot. Cukurs was reportedly named amongst the men present. The symbolism was deliberate. Erase the place of worship, you will erase the people. The true scale of the horror reached its height in late November and early December 1941. The site, Rumbula Forest. Over 2 days, November 30th and December 8th, approximately 25,000 Jews from the Riga Ghetto were marched to and prepared in pits and shot. The massacre was organized under German command, but local auxiliaries played critical roles in rounding up victims, guarding columns, and forcing people forward. Cukurs was there. Survivor testimonies described him supervising, striking those who faltered, and firing at close range. Families were forced to undress in freezing weather. Mothers clutched children, elderly men stumbled, and gunfire echoed through the trees. The scale was industrial. By the end of 1941, the Jewish community of Riga had been nearly annihilated. As the war turned against Germany, collaborators faced a choice: flee, disappear, or be captured. Cukurs fled westward as Soviet forces advanced. He avoided prosecution in Europe and eventually made his way to South America. He settled in Brazil, and astonishingly, he lived openly. He opened businesses, he advertised aviation services, he posted photographs, he did not hide his identity. In interviews, he denied the accusations. He claimed he had saved Jews. He claimed the allegations were Soviet propaganda. And for years, he remained untouched. There was no immediate tribunal, no Nuremberg moment for him, no public reckoning. But memory does not fade so easily. In the post-war decades, Israel pursued architects and participants in the Holocaust across continents. The capture of Adolf Eichmann in Argentina in 1960 demonstrated that distance offered no guarantee of safety. Cukurs came under renewed scrutiny. In 1965, a man posing as a businessman befriended him in Brazil. He claimed to represent investors interested in aviation ventures. Meetings followed and trust grew. The businessman was an agent of Israel intelligence service Mossad. Cukurs was lured to Uruguay under the pretext of a lucrative deal. It was there in February 1965 he was confronted. Accounts suggested he attempted resistance, and a struggle followed. He was killed. His body was left in a trunk alongside documents detailing his alleged crimes. The message was unmistakable. The Butcher of Riga had been judged. However, the killing of Herberts Cukurs remains controversial. Supporters argue that formal justice had failed. There was no court that held him accountable, that he lived freely while thousands lay in unmarked graves. Critics argue that extrajudicial killing undermines the rule of law. There was no trial, there was no public presentation of evidence, and no opportunity for defense. Instead, there was just a finality. His death reopened debates within Latvia and beyond. Was he a war criminal, or had he been unfairly branded? For historians, the weight of testimony is substantial. Survivor accounts, German records, and post-war investigations converge. He was not a minor functionary. He was a willing participant in mass murder. In modern Latvia, the memory of war is complex. The nation endured Soviet occupation, then Nazi occupation, then Soviet domination again for decades. Narratives of victimhood and collaboration intertwine uneasily. Some fringe voices attempted to rehabilitate Cukurs in the 1990s and early 2000s, portraying him primarily as a pre-war aviator. But historical scholarship is unambiguous about the role of the Arajs Kommando and its leaders. The Jewish community of Latvia was almost entirely destroyed. Before 1941, roughly 70,000 Jews lived in Latvia. By the end of the Holocaust, the vast majority were dead. The name Cukurs remains inseparable from that devastation. It's tempting to search for monstrous origins, to imagine that the Butcher of Riga must have been visibly depraved from childhood. Yet history offers little evidence of such inevitability. He was educated, he was skilled, he was celebrated. He just made choices. The transition from national hero to executioner was not compelled by destiny. It was shaped by ideology, resentment, opportunity, and of course the corrosive power of war. In 1941, as German occupation authorities encouraged and coordinated anti-Jewish violence, men like Cukurs did not hesitate. They acted. The Holocaust was not carried out solely by distant bureaucrats in Berlin. It required local participation, local knowledge, and local initiative. The forests of Latvia became killing grounds because men familiar with those forests led victims into them. Today, Rumbula forest is quiet. Trees stand where pits once lay open. Memorial stones bear inscriptions in Latvian, Hebrew, and English. Visitors walk past that overlay one of Europe's largest single-site massacres of Jews during the Holocaust. It's not a dramatic place. There are no grand ruins and no towering monuments. There's only silence. The story of the Butcher of Riga forces uncomfortable questions. How quickly can admiration transform into hatred? How easily can public prestige shield private brutality? How long can a society wrestle with memory before truth settles? For decades, Cukurs insisted on his innocence. He claimed he protected Jews. Some supporters echoed these claims. But historical investigation is not built on slogans. It rests on documents, on corroborated testimony, on patterns of behavior. The pattern in Riga in 1941 is unmistakable. Mass arrest, public humiliation, ghettoization, execution, and within that pattern, the reoccurring presence of Herberts Cukurs.